So do you want to talk to us about, what is a positive mindset, how you get a positive mindset when you're feeling less than positive, particularly if your business is in trouble?
Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could go and buy that along with the toilet paper?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not how we get a positive mindset. The first thing that I want to say is I'm not a fan of this forced positivity thing that a lot of people will talk about. I think we need to be realistic, not fake positivity. So what I would aim more for is resilience, which, that's, to me, that's an authentic positivity. It means that I feel like I've got the skills to cope with whatever comes up. And so
Thank you very much for joining us. I've got Karyn Battersby with me right now. I'm going to just give a quick spiel about you so people understand who you are and your relevance. So you're a self-proclaimed people watcher and a human behaviour specialist. You're also very big in the world of training and development, counselling and coaching. I know this from a personal point of view because you did a lot of work with me last year and continue to do work helping me in the personal and professional space. I am seeing with this latest the pandemic that we're finding ourselves living in right now, it's quite a frightening time, and people are really they're anxious, they're fearful, they're doing really crazy things like buying up too much toilet paper and hoarding food. There's a lot of social unrest. I'm very concerned what's happening behind closed doors in families as well. So I've invited you to come and talk. So, I'm hoping a lot of business owners come online and check us out. But not just that, I really want to hope that, just people from the general public as well can really rewatch what we're doing and get some, peace of mind and some takeaway stuff from you to help them. So I'm going to hand over to you now if you want to sort of like introduce yourself a little bit, lead on from what I've said, and give us a little bit of a background behind the scenes of who you are.
Beautiful. Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, great. So obviously I've trained in the fields of psychology and counselling and training and development and coaching. So I've got qualifications in all those areas, and I've been, sort of floating around in that sort of professional personal development space for about 20 years now. Kind of gives my age away. And I've always been fascinated with why people do the things that they do. It's, I love to delve deep into people's psyche. Why do we do those things? So this is a really interesting time for me to be observing people and, understanding what's going on for people as well. So that's where we're at. And at the moment, I do work in the domestic violence field as well. So, you talked about what's going on behind closed doors. And, that is always very pertinent and very interesting. Again, we're seeing increases in reported domestic violence in these times, because when people are stretched to their limit, unfortunately, it comes out in some fairly not healthy ways.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because it already is a massive issue in this country, domestic violence, and just a lot of that unrest in the home. So it's quite frightening what could be actually happening now with, this whole new stress level and people's mental health in general. So I guess, leading on from that, what do you think is moving forward is the best way to proceed? Like we're really in the early stages. We're looking at countries that are far further along than we are right now. What do you think? How should we be responding, and what can we do to protect ourselves from these feelings?
So there's a lot of anxiety and fear out there at the moment, and I'm not saying anything that people haven't noticed. That whole hoarding toilet paper is just a manifestation of people's fear. It's a fear-based behaviour, and it's actually quite understandable when you consider that, people, when they feel unsafe, they want to control their environment. And so what can they do? They can stock up. Hoarding is a behaviour of, trying to control your environment. So, those kinds of behaviours are almost expected, I guess. So what can we do that's positive? Well, obviously we've got to work on our mindset and work on managing our anxiety and our fear. The unfortunate thing is that times like this are always going to, I guess, reveal the people who don't have resilience to start with. Like, these challenging times are much harder for people who don't already have resilience. So I guess coming from a compassionate and empathic place and understanding that, what you're seeing in those people hoarding toilet paper, for instance, they don't have the resilience to cope in other ways. And so they need to try and control their environment, and so they rush out and stock up.
It's interesting you say that, because I was reading, like, we haven't, like, people my age and our age and younger, we haven't lived in hard times ever, So at least people, I know I'm from a farming background, so my parents have lived, farmers live through tremendous droughts and a lot of difficult challenges, and they seem to be coping a lot better, quite frankly, on the land than we are in the cities. I would make that observation, because we've got no resilience training. So how does one even learn that now on the fly? I mean, what do we do?
It's tough. It's really tough, because, you think about, well, how do you build resilience? It's not something that happens overnight. It's something, where we experience sort of trauma or difficult circumstances, and then we succeed and overcome. And it can take, months and months and months. So developing on the fly is not an easy thing to do. We start building resilience in our children from a very, very early age. And I think, frankly, a lot of that has stopped as well. There'll be a lot of people in their late teens and early 20s who are going to be not coping nearly as well as perhaps people our age, Melissa, because they've not learned resilience. It's not something that a lot of families are actually teaching young people these days.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, quite frankly, I love millennials, so I'm not bagging up millennials, but we've done this to them, like, as Gen Xers. Yeah. And our parents, baby boomers, like, they are the pampered generation. And it's interesting. So I'm observing from my experience with my own children, they're just going about daily life. They're quite oblivious to what's going on. And I don't know if that's a coping mechanism. They're actually in complete and utter denial. And if that's going to go really pear-shaped in the coming weeks, when we are in a forced lockdown as opposed to like a voluntary lockdown. What conversations should parents be having now with their kids, and what level should we be talking about with different ages? How to respond?
With my 16-year-old son, the conversations that I'm having are around, fear-based behaviours and things. So he has talked a little bit about seeing people engaging in some not so kind kinds of activities. And I've encouraged him to be compassionate and empathic and understand that they're operating from fear-based behaviour. And, that analogy of the orange, when times are tough and you're squeezed, what's inside comes out. If you've got you back up against the wall, your character is going to be really revealed in these difficult times. So people who are already stretched and don't have good resilience and who haven't learnt healthy coping mechanisms are under pressure. And so we're going to see some of those behaviours come out. But I also encourage him to look around and look for the helpers and say, well, you'll also see the people who are stepping forward and leading and who are doing the kind things and, helping out and offering their services. So, for every negative behaviour that we see, there are also people who are really rising to the occasion as well. And again, when life squeezes you, you see what comes out. And so I just encourage him to look for those people and have compassion for the others. We talk about, minimising contact and social distancing and those kinds of things. And the school is very big on that, so they're having lots of conversations about that. I've been unwell myself this week, so he's been doing things like giving me the coronavirus kiss goodnight, which is basically just blowing me kisses from across the room and saying, good night, Mum. So age appropriate. It has to be, you don't want to put fear into your children. You want to breed them, build them to be courageous and resilient, but also being realistic and truthful and transparent. There's no point in pretending that this is as bad as it's going to get. It's not. We will follow the trend of those other countries. And, I think being a truth teller is actually really important too, without catastrophizing.
Yeah, isn't that really a good point to make up, without the catastrophizing? Like, I'm really concerned about the different conversations happening in different homes. I really feel for some families if they have a parent that's not doing really well at all, because they're the leader, and how are they leading at the moment?
But understanding not everybody's capable of being a leader right now. That's a tough call, because there are families out there struggling, and obviously I come into contact with quite a lot of them in my line of work. It's sad, but you can't blame others for not having that skill set. We have to be compassionate about that. It is a learnt skill set. But having said that, if you've got very real mental health issues, this is really going to challenge you. This time in history is going to be very, very difficult, because there are already people who don't have a lot of resources available to them. They're already vulnerable emotionally. So for those kids, it's tough. Who's going to teach them? It's really tough.
So maybe it's good that, maybe it is great that the schools are open, quite frankly, because there are some challenged kids that would be doing better to be in a school environment actually than to be boarded up at home with a family not doing well.
That's very, very true. And there's a lot involved in that decision for them to keep schools open. I know a lot of people have been hypercritical about that, and then other people being very, very supportive of it too. But, there's a whole lot of ramifications that you have to consider if schools are closed. Exactly. One of those things is, what's going to happen with children. But also, 30% of our healthcare workers have children. And what happens if we then, if they've got to stay home and look after children? We're going to have fewer healthcare workers as well. There's a lot, not to mention putting businesses into possible recession situations and all the rest of it. There's a lot to consider. I'm not saying I approve necessarily the way the government's handling it, but I understand it's a complex decision to make.
So let's talk about business owners then, because obviously, that is a lot of the people that follow me are business owners, or entrepreneurs, or they're marketing managers, people that are in leadership roles. I've really noticed this week there's been a lot of silence. I've been getting just the standard emails that this is our coronavirus policy, let's wash hands and social distancing. I'm like, well, tell me something new. Or actually don't tell me that, because that's a given. Like, talk to me about how you're responding. I feel like we're really, everybody, me included, everybody is on the back foot right this second, because we're really responding right now to the urgency rather than having a plan put in front. How can we, and I think half of that is we're just catching up. We're letting our brains catch up to where the hell we're at. This is so brand new. Nobody's experienced this. So I've been banding around this word positive mindset. So do you want to talk to us about, what is a positive mindset? How you get a positive mindset when you're feeling less than positive, particularly if your business is in trouble?
Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could go and buy that along with the toilet paper?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not how we get a positive mindset. The first thing that I want to say is I'm not a fan of this forced positivity thing that a lot of people will talk about. I think we need to be realistic, not fake positivity. But I do think, so what I would aim more for is resilience, which, that's, to me, that's an authentic positivity. It means that I feel like I've got the skills to cope with whatever comes up. And so, you can afford to be positive when you're in that place, rather than putting your head in the sand and pretending that things are not happening. So that's how I look at it. It doesn't involve self-deception or facades. It's being authentic and being real about what's going on. So being a truth teller to ourselves first, obviously, that we can deal with the situation as it really is, and then developing resilience. So reframing things. We can look at now as being, oh my God, these are unprecedented times, and they certainly are that. Or we can go, hey, wow, this is opening up some real opportunities that we've never had before. So reframing is important. Both are perhaps equally true statements, but what kind of evidence are you going to stack? Do you want to stack, that catastrophic evidence of, oh my God, people are dying, all the rest of it? Or do you want to stack the evidence that goes, hey, I'm seeing some really agile businesses out there that are responding really quickly, taking their businesses online and opening up opportunities for things that have never happened before. In my own workplace, I spent this whole week on business continuity planning. One of the things that we're doing is we're sending our workforce remote. We've never done that before. Never. This is an opportunity for us to innovate and, having mobile counsellors or remote counsellors working from their homes. I mean, Lifeline's been doing things like this forever, but the rest of the industry hasn't.
Yeah.
Why not? Well, there's no good reason why not. So we're now innovating. We're being forced to innovate. That's an opportunity. So, from my perspective, I think that's amazing. That whole business continuity planning, I've got 6 contracts that I manage all around DV.
Domestic violence.
Sorry, domestic and family violence. Yeah, domestic DFV is how we call it in the industry. But, the reality is we're experiencing, we're going to have staff who are off because they're unwell or self-excluding or, in isolation for whatever reason, increasing referrals because everybody's under pressure and stress, and a workforce that, isn't in a central location. So I've had to innovate about, well, how am I going to continue service delivery through all of that?
Yeah.
It's been an interesting space to be in this week, but I love innovation. So for me, huge opportunity. So I think, that's something, to reframe it and look at it as an opportunity. One of the things that I would also say is, you need to connect back to yourself. You need to understand what your vision and your mission and your values are, because you're going to be making some tough decisions. And those decisions become much, much easier when you're really clear on who you are and where you sit in the world and why you do what you do. So I think, accepting reality is really important, but understanding ourselves and connecting to ourselves becomes really, really important in uncertain times, because otherwise we're like a little bit of sea foam floating on the waves being thrown around in the turbulence. Yeah. When we're very, very clear on who we are and why we're doing what we're doing and what our vision and our mission is, we can stand strong in the storm. We come back to that all the time, come back to that in our decision making, come back to, am I operating in a way that is aligned with who I believe myself to be? Does this match my identity conversation? And when you can say yes to all of those things, it puts you in that growth mindset place. It puts you in the place where you can pivot and adapt and improvise, and you consider the whole thing a learning experience and an opportunity instead of being fear-based. The minute you start making decisions from fear, guarantee you're making bad decisions.
Can I butt in at this point? Because I've had a year long of conversations with you. I'm very grateful that I am 12 months off having been counselled by you and, working together on, on all sorts of stuff, to be entering now this phase. I feel quite equipped. There are people who have not had the benefit of that, don't have a clue what you mean when you say coming back to self. So can we sort of break that down, what coming back to self kind of even means, and how somebody can do that in a short amount of time? Obviously, you're not going to become a guru, but, just some simple steps.
All right. So when I talk about coming back to self, I'm talking about knowing and understanding ourselves first. So this is about being solid in who you are as an individual. So, your self-worth, your ability to stand firm in who you are and not be affected by, other people's opinions, for instance, and people-pleasing and those kinds of behaviours. A couple of really, really quick things that you can do. Get clear on what your values are. That's the very first thing, because all of our decisions should be made in alignment with our values. Okay. I was having a conversation with a client this morning about self-worth. How do you build self-worth? There's only one way to build self-worth, and that is for you to make decisions, to take actions every day that make you proud of you. Now, I can sing your praise and say, oh my God, Melissa, you're amazing, you're this, you're that, or your partner, same thing, oh, you're so sexy, you're so hot, you're so incredible, you're so intelligent, But if you don't believe those things about yourself, they mean nothing at all.
That's right.
And so self-worth is only developed through me taking actions every day that I personally am proud of. And that will be different for every single person. So how do you do that? Well, you need to know what your values are. They've got to be in alignment, those decisions, with what your individual personal values are.
Can we talk about values then? I'm just going to keep bringing you back.
We're going down the rabbit hole.
Because I get the conversation, and but I understand, because sometimes I have these conversations with clients and they're just staring blankly at me when I say, well, what are the values of your business? And they're like, oh, good delivery, quality work. It's like, no, what are your values? Yeah. It's new concept to some people.
I know, that always surprises me. I don't understand that.
We're not taught this stuff in school. We certainly don't have these conversations with our baby boomer parents. No. So unless we've lucked out and got a friend or something that's introduced us to this, or we've done a bit of personal development, it's just a conversation we haven't had.
Yeah, very true. So values are, I guess your guiding principles in life.
Yeah.
And, when pushed, most people say, oh, family, connection. Yeah, all right. Those are fairly standard, and they may or may not be your values, and that's fine. But I like to think about it in terms of, all right, if I were to say truth-telling, right? One of my personal values, to be truthful.
Yeah.
So what does that look like as an action or in behaviour? Well, that means that I have the tough conversations. I have the courageous conversations. I tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable, even when my voice is shaking, even when I feel incredibly vulnerable, even when it would be easier not to. So what does truth-telling look like in action or as a behaviour? Truth-telling looks like me stating my truth even when I'm uncomfortable. Okay, so it's a like, I will tell the truth no matter what.
Well, isn't that funny? Because this week, sorry to butt in, but I just share my personal story. This week, I've been like going like a maniac every morning at 9 a.m., speaking for an hour, just giving away all this free content on online marketing, because that's my skill set, and I feel like that I want to help, because connection's one of my is one of my high values. But the other high value is inspiration. So I'm just trying to be as inspiring as possible. And I find that has been keeping me going from not slipping into feeling fear or anxiety, because I'm living to my truth. So I feel useful and productive when I'm just helping as much as I possibly can, because they're to help and to lead and to guide and to be inspiring are my values, and yeah, I highly recommend it. Just do what feels natural if it's a positive step.
I think, it's great that you're saying that, because what you're telling me, you're putting into action exactly what I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And when times are tough, we come back to our values. We need to come back to our values and check our alignment. The other thing that you're unwittingly doing there is that you're managing your anxiety by taking action. And
Yeah.
that's a really positive step too. How do I lower my anxiety? Well, by feeling like I've got a plan and I'm taking some positive action towards, resolving or solving the problem.
I love that. That is so amazing. So even if people just did that, just creating a plan, understanding what their challenges are, like being really, as you say, honest and truthful about what their challenges are with their business, which could be quite serious, then sit down and try and get above, you taught me this, get above the problem and really just look down on it really practically, and then come up with a plan and then start taking positive action steps. Surely that is going to get you for some time, out of that fear and anxiety space.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what I would actually advise, first of all?
Yeah.
And this comes from being an entrepreneur and being a business owner, okay, and being completely disassociated from myself and my body and my feelings, okay, because I used to work really, really long hours, and I know there are lots of business people out there. I wasn't unusual. Lots and lots of business people out there were doing, and are doing what I was doing back then.
Well, just to clarify, you were a chef working like stupid hours.
I owned two businesses. I had a restaurant and a function centre. I worked 90 hours a week. I did 100 weddings a year.
Yeah.
I didn't work as a chef in my business.
Oh, sorry.
That 90 hours, but yeah, I often used to pull a breakfast shift here and there, yes, as a chef.
Oh,
but the rest I was managing it. But anyway, 90 hours a week. So anyway, the first thing that you need to do is pause and acknowledge that you're feeling anxious. Because I guarantee you there's a whole lot of business people out there that don't even know that that's what they're feeling. They've got something going on in their body, a strange kind of energy and a tightness, but they don't identify it as anxiety. So the first thing that you need to do is pause and actually acknowledge what that feeling is and label it, name it. Oh, okay, that's interesting. I can feel that my chest is tight and I'm, breathing really shallowly rather than deep from my diaphragm. And, I'm kind of like panting and I feel like there's a tight band around my head and I can feel my shoulders are all scrunched up and my teeth are clenched. I think I'm feeling anxiety.
Yeah.
I think I'm feeling fear. So naming it is really important, first of all. You've got to be able to name it in order to be able to then do something about it.
Wasn't that interesting? Because if there's something a business owner probably doesn't want to acknowledge, is that they are in a place of weakness or fear. Like I know for the longest time, I was the person, just faking it till you make it and kind of coming over the top of that. And then, so what actually happens to us if we don't address how we're feeling, if we don't address that we're in a place of anxiety and we're pushing through? And I love that expression because that's what so many business owners do. A lot of women do that. Mm-hmm. What happens to us?
Oh, your body will break down. It's really quite simple.
I'm assuming your relationships break down. Yeah. With your health, yeah.
Everything, health. I think the greatest price you can pay is your health, and I paid that price. I ended up with an autoimmune disease, and a lot of people, and I used to pride myself on, and I'd make comments about, my body never lets me down. It just amazes me. I remember working a 23-hour day, 3 days post-abdominal surgery that you usually have 6 weeks off work for.
Yeah, and you're probably proud of yourself. I
was incredibly, I'm amazing. Look what I can do. So there's the first thing. Your body will break down eventually. It will just stop. So I think a couple of things that we can do, but we need to manage that anxiety, because if you leave, your body flooded with cortisol for a long period of time, you will get unwell. It's simple. Your body can't cope any other way. It will absolutely do that. So you need to be able to learn to manage that anxiety and that cortisol, because remember, what's happening here is you're getting a fear response. Your amygdala, which is a little part of your old brain in there that goes, am I safe? It's the part that's there to save us from saber-toothed tigers, right? And so and you would know this as the fight or flight reflex, right? But there's actually 5 F's. There's the fight, flight, freeze, flop, and fawn. So there's 5.
Fawn.
Yeah, fawn. So think of a dog who rolls over onto its back and shows its belly to a dominant dog. That's kind of a fawning response, right? So there's actually 5 different responses, but we're dealing with the fight or flight. And this is what's happening in this time. Everybody's amygdala is going nuts, and they're going, oh, fight or flight, fight or flight. And so, you've got people having fights over toilet paper in bloody supermarkets, because that's where they're operating from. So much cortisol and energy is flooding their system that they can't control it. Now, people who have unhealthy mechanisms or trauma histories are not good at self-regulating. And so that amygdala is just firing constantly and flooding their body with these stress hormones, cortisol. So self-regulation is really, really important. How can we self-regulate? So one of those things is feeling that anxiety and naming it, as I said, and then reframing it and going, oh, I can feel this energy in my body. This is like an excitement. And, I feel, because you think about it, that's exactly what it is. When you're wanting to flee, you're in that place of everything is ready. All of the cortisol's flooded your body. You're ready to jump and run. So that's a type of excitement in your body. So how do I reframe that excitement, and what do I do with it? One of the things you can do is some physical exercise. It's a great way to burn off the cortisol. Go out for a walk, do something. And it's okay to say, I'm feeling anxious right now. I'm feeling uncertain. I'm feeling fearful. Naming those things is a really good thing to do. And understand that, that excitement of your body being flooded with cortisol is just a way that your body's saying, I'm ready for change. I'm ready for this. So we can use that or utilize it for positive things in order to, to change our business or to innovate or to pivot, or we can close down into a trauma response. And unfortunately, whether or not you close down into a trauma response or whether you see it as an opportunity, a lot of that is going to be based in your history.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So if you haven't done the work, and cleared yourself from all of your childhood stories, which is how our personalities are formed, I guess you've got that going against you too. And we don't have the time right now as a business owner to go back and go, oh, I think I'll just go and figure out, why am I responding like this? Somebody at 26 years old. So what are some, you were talking to me about some activity steps, some rituals that people can do to try and sort of really help them manage this time.
So I've got a daily worksheet that I've developed for clients who work with me. So I'll make that available to all of your clients for starters. But it involves daily rituals like meditating, calming your anxious mind, journaling, acknowledging how you're feeling, identifying how you're feeling, naming it, examining it, and then putting it in a safe place. So, you might go, look, I'm feeling anxious this morning. I acknowledge that. I can feel that in my body, and these are the reasons why I know that that's what I'm feeling. I'm going to put that in a box, and I'm going to put it over here on the bookcase behind me, tie it up with a bow. It's there. I'm acknowledging it, but I'm not going to let it rule my day. I'm not going to let it direct all of my activity today.
Yeah.
Visualization is a big one. So,
Visualizing. Yeah. Can you explain to people what that even means?
yeah. So, an example. Pardon me. Sorry. I think I'm doing well.
Have a drink of water. Have a drink of water.
Doing really well not to have coughed yet.
Yeah. No. Oh, and you've got the pineapple juice because apparently that's really good for the sore throats.
Yeah, really good for coughs. It's got an enzyme in it that calms the throat. So visualizing is having a picture in your mind of what you want to create or how you would like things to be. Yeah. But it's important that it be related to you. Like, you've really got to bring it back to feelings. It can't just be, thoughts or a cognitive process. You've got to actually go, and I'm just going to give you an example, something I worked on with a client this morning. Visualizing, like your perfect day, what you want to be able to achieve in your business, for instance. Okay, so you would say something along the lines of, I'm going to create an online course because I want to be able to work from home. I want to be able to work remotely. I want to be able to travel the world with my children and, show them the world and connect with them emotionally and, always be available to them. You really have to bring it back to not just the cognitive process, but connecting and feeling. So, how will you feel when you're doing that? I'll feel connected to my children. I'll feel proud of the fact that I'm showing them the world. I'll feel excited that they've been exposed to that kind of growth at an early age.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things that you've got to do when you visualize. Bring it back to feelings.
So, okay, so an action step then perhaps for a business owner. So say I've got a business owner, they're really distressed. They feel like a restaurant owner. I'm going to just throw you big time in the deep end because I feel like they are really struggling massively. And I think a lot of them are going to lose their businesses, unfortunately, and a lot of restaurant workers are going to be out of work. So say the restaurant owner, how they want to visualise, how would they use visualisation, do you think, I guess they've got a choice, don't they? Create a new reality? Do they go into the home delivery system? So can you, I've so put you on the spot, but this is what you do.
Happy to be, and I'm glad you've chosen an area that I've got some expertise in. Thank you for that.
These are the people that they're seriously struggling immediately.
I totally get it, and I can see it even locally here. My favourite cafe this morning, quiet. Not that I went in because so what I did was ordered a coffee to pick up from the window and had my son run and pick it up. So they've got to think about, those kinds of things. They've got to be responsive. So what they might do is they might go, all right, what would, what would a no-contact restaurant look like? So for starters, they've got to be able to come up with some kind of a concept of, how could we resolve this problem? What is the issue? The issue is people can't be in contact with each other. So how do I resolve that? What are the needs? How can I fix that problem? People don't want to suddenly cook. I guarantee you that.
There's no food to cook in some places. So.
There's that too. And let's face it, restaurant owners may well be having supply chain issues too. But assuming that they're not, right? Okay. So things like delivery, what if you partner with Deliveroo and they do your local town so that you can, have all of your meals delivered to wherever? What if you have, like the takeaway coffees or a drive-through coffee? What capability do you have? Could you have a runner who literally runs out to the curb with their coffee so that they literally just pull up and, you run out to the curb with it? Like, what are the innovations that you could do given the structure that you've currently got? You could shut the doors and perhaps not have a single customer in. Maybe there's other ways of, delivering that service in some other way.
I think it's incredibly important what you're just describing now too. So visualizing is great, but having a support network around you of positive people who are doing this as well. Like, I am being very careful who I'm talking to right now and being around. And we're just thinking about, so what you're describing to me is that could be an amazing business opportunity for the future. It doesn't have to just stop now. It's not just for the next 3 months. And that's what I'm trying to get across in my marketing, because that's what I'm trying to think myself. And Yeah. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Just because we've never done it this way in the past doesn't mean that there's not a really viable business opportunity there in the future. I mean, look at things like Uber and, Uber Eats. And, I know actually last week I was in Brisbane for a couple of days, and the hotel I stayed in doesn't actually have its own restaurant. But through Deliveroo, there were 6 restaurants locally who would deliver directly to my hotel room. Now, that's a model that is already being used in places. Why not adopt that to your restaurant? Why not, all right, we're going to close for 3 months, but you're still going to get the best of our food, and this is how we're going to do it.
And at least you can keep half your staff on in that period of time.
Absolutely. And being proactive and visualising there's any number of solutions that have never been thought of before. I'm not even, able to give you all of those, obviously.
Yeah. You're just giving us the tools. Were there any other tools? Because I keep butting in all the time with the rituals like we had.
Yeah, so I think I said journaling, meditating, exercising. Definitely limit your screen time. Like you just talked about how you're being influenced.
Yeah.
There is nothing to be gained from feeding yourself a steady diet of catastrophic apocalyptic news right now, okay? Check once a day so that you're up to date with what needs to be done, but don't be living on there and eating, sleeping and breathing it. Don't be catastrophizing, Sleep hygiene, really, really important, because I tell you what, if there's any one thing that impairs your ability to cope more than anything else, it's lack of sleep. Practicing gratitude is really important. Like, there's a lot to be grateful for at the moment, and it can be really hard to see what those things are, but I guarantee you, if you make it a practice, you will see things to be grateful for.
Can you just pulling on gratitude? Gratitude has helped me out of. You're right. Gratitude has helped me out of the worst times of my life. Can you describe to people, because seriously, let's just get back to basics. I reckon there's some people out there that don't even know what you mean when you say practicing gratitude. Can you quickly just describe how you practice gratitude, what a gratitude practice is?
Yep. So I've actually got this on the daily worksheet as well. Okay, so the daily worksheet has got all of these steps on it, and you just work through each of those things. So 3 things that I'm grateful for today. One of I'm really grateful that I am well positioned to adapt to this changing marketplace. I'm really grateful for the amazing minds of the people who are around me, encouraging me to step forward into these opportunities. I am really grateful for a partner who holds space for me when I'm feeling anxious and fearful, but doesn't allow me to sink into catastrophizing things. Yeah. There's 3 daily gratitudes, bang, just like that, seconds.
Do you reckon? I do it as a practice every day, religiously, morning when I wake up, and then night before I go to sleep. So then I'm kind of like resetting my brain. But I would suggest, do you even recommend that people, if they're really feeling really bad, if they've just had to let off staff and, or they're just really in a bad way, I mean, how would you reckon they could use gratitude even more frequently throughout the day, like set a timer on their phone or something?
One of the things that I used to do with my partner, I had a timer set on my phone for 10:26 a.m, random time, and I would literally send him a message via text about something I was grateful about having him in my life. So, and that was just my way of showing appreciation and gratitude for him. You can do the same thing hourly to practice gratitude for your own life and for yourself. I think that that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I like to systemize anything. He knew that he was getting a text at 10:26 a.m. because it would come through every day. But so it wasn't a surprise to him, but it was still a beautiful moment for him to stop and reflect, and for me to stop and reflect about what I was grateful for. So, systemize it. Set an alarm on your phone. Absolutely. I've got a water reminder on my phone. Why not a gratitude reminder?
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is, whilst it can feel like, when we're in the present moment, it can feel like it's an absolute catastrophe and nothing will ever get worse, is we're all still alive. We're all still very healthy. We live in the most affluent, abundant times. We have our freedom in this country. We have fresh water in this country. We have a medical system far superior to other people's medical systems. Our neighbours still generally are really good people. there's so many things. We have the internet, so we can move our businesses online. Like, heaven help us if we can't do that. But there's, like, I'm just rattling off all the things. These are just, and people don't even think to be grateful for fresh water is a thing. But if you go to a third world country, it quickly is a thing. Or to be, I often say in my gratitude, I'm so grateful to live in Australia and to be born female in these current times in Australia, because I am an equal citizen as opposed to another country in a different era. And people might laugh at that, but right now, if you're hanging trying to find anything to be grateful for, that might be it.
Right. And look, the reality is, when we're so privileged, it's easy to slip into an ungrateful attitude, like an entitlement attitude, right?
Yes.
But we should be grateful for all those things. We consider them to be our God-given rights. But the reality is, plenty of countries in the world prove that they're not.
Yeah.
So, there is always something to be grateful for. And look, I know you know about this, but I had this fire some time ago now, and I lost everything, right? And I count that as one of the things that I am most grateful for. And people still look at me strangely when I talk about that. And I'm like, well, that was one of my greatest growth and learning opportunities. That's something to be grateful for. I'm a different person as a result of having experienced that. We will all be different people for having experienced these times. That's something to be grateful for. A lot of us are not going to feel grateful till after it's over. Some people who don't have growth mindsets will probably never be grateful for it. Yeah. But for the rest of us, this is an opportunity to learn about yourself. This is the stuff that we don't know about ourselves because we've never lived through these times before. I have a sense of excitement, and I know that might sound a little strange to some people, because I just see opportunity for growth and for learning more deeply about myself, and practicing connection and compassion and empathy. I'm looking for new ways to connect. That's a great thing. Connection is incredibly important right now.
Wow, that's the name of the podcast.
What you talk about all the time, Melissa. So
I do, yeah. And I too, in a really selfish way, see this as a great opportunity long term, because I think it's going to open up the conversation to, well, what was missing throughout of this and what pulled us through this. And already people are talking about it, which I'm loving. And I'm going to ask this question of you in a second, but I'm observing that it's same with the bushfires. The bushfires happen, everyone freaks out, lose the plot, everyone's like bickering at each other, carrying on. And then about a week later, I kind of notice all of a sudden people are going, come on, guys, let's work together, let's collaborate, let's help. And then we've got Celeste Barber earning, raising that insane amount of money, which is great. And it's kind of the same with this. Everyone's, attacking each other about the toilet paper and all those silly things. But I'm sort of seeing a lot more people helping online and trying hard to put up positive messages to help others, and giving stories about where they helped an elderly person with their shopping, or they took around 6 packs of toilet paper to their neighbour who had none. Like, is there a time frame where is there something that actually happens, do you reckon, in people's psyche, where we freak out first, we get used to it, and then we kind of like start to help? Like, is there
a new normal, right? This is what we're talking about, a new normal. So it is true that it's not as though everybody freaks out at the beginning, right? But some people do, and again, often people who've got that heightened fear response, okay, because of trauma in their past, or a lack of resilience, or not having coped too well with stuff in the past, so they will be heightened very quickly. But you do see that, then the helpers come forward. There's always both camps, the ones who are just out for themselves and are hoarding, well above the normal toilet paper, and then selling, 6-pack for $35 to benefit from it. And then there are the helpers who are truly, what's the word I'm looking for? When they put their own needs, second. They're wanting to be of service to people.
Yeah.
So, that's a fairly normal reaction to any kind of crisis. It doesn't, you think back to 9/11, you think back to, war times, all of it. There are always going to be, those two responses. And I guess I encourage, and we talked about, doing your work. That's my phrase I use all the time. But, encouraging people to learn to self-regulate, deal with their historical stuff so that they can self-regulate, because then that allows them to step into that helping space instead of being completely consumed, catastrophizing and fearful. the most satisfying thing that you can do when you're in that place is actually help someone else, because it removes the focus from you, and puts it on someone else. So volunteering is a really great way of managing your anxiety, because it takes the emphasis off your struggle and helps you to see that there are people out there that are struggling more.
So then I guess people will be feeling a real sense of helping purpose. And yeah, so well, there you go. There's a good question for you. How else do you think people can be feeling a sense of purpose during this time, and not really just like focusing on themselves and what's happening?
Well, I guess, talking about managing anxiety the way that we were before, and one of the key things about anxiety is trying to regain some control. And see, this is why people hoard, because they're trying to regain some control, right? What can I have control over? All right, what I wipe my bum with. So, they want to control what they can. But, other ways of managing that is to develop a plan and run with that and do some purposeful activity. When you know your vision and your mission and your values in life, it's easy to then understand what your why is or your purpose is. And so then you can choose activities that are aligned with that. So volunteering might, or, if you've got a strong altruistic streak, volunteering might be that thing. If you've got a strong entrepreneurial streak, helping other people with their businesses might be their thing. If you've got a strong empathic streak, helping other people with their mindset might be your thing. Yeah. So there's always ways you can help depending on what your particular strengths are, your individual strengths and your individual values. There is literally, every single person out there's got a unique skill set. So every single person out there's got something to offer that's needed.
Yeah.
Think about what you can do to assist others using those tools and skills. So yeah, might be volunteering. In your case, obviously you've been doing the Facebook Live to help businesses thrive in this time.
Yeah, wow, that's really cool. So do you think there might be long-term emotional damage and mindset, like what do you sort of see in particularly working, with people?
Absolutely.
Yeah, what do you think?
I'd say that that's almost guaranteed, to be honest, and especially if it goes on for any length of time. I've already spoken about the fact that, the most fragile and vulnerable people are the ones who are going to be doing it the toughest right now, because they're not equipped. They don't have the skill set to cope with this. So you think about it, take that vulnerable person, maybe they're out of work now as well, right? Because they're often not the highly educated, securely employed people. So that, they may well be out of work now. Imagine, those stresses and things coming into the family home. They may have children who are now going to be excluded from school, partners, they're all in lockdown together. There's no money coming in. They can't pay their rent. They're struggling for money to pay for food and things. They already don't have good resilience and probably not healthy relationship management skills. And we're going to put all of that into a lockdown situation in a household. And, there's going to be some leaching of behaviours. So they're going to struggle. Anybody who is in that situation for any length of time, it causes trauma. Causes trauma to the children who observe it and who are tiptoeing around trying not to set dad off, or, maybe mum's got a mental health issue. And I'm not, trying to make this gendered, but, if there's that fragility in the family, everybody's going to suffer.
Yeah. Wow.
And there will be ongoing trauma because of that. That's the reality. A lot of people don't understand the intergenerational nature of trauma.
So I guess what we can do moving forward as caring citizens, is to have compassion and to, I guess, help as much as we can, or I don't know, what can we do? What to feel a bit better about, more empowered around this and help people?
So I think, there are lots of ways that volunteering can be done.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as reaching out to neighbours if you know that you've got people who are in those vulnerable situations. And, you can help out in some way. It might be that you go and do their groceries for them. It could be that maybe you're in a position financially to, to lower, maybe you're a landlord and you're in a position to go, I'll half your rent at the moment, or I'll subsidise your rent at the moment. Or maybe you're in a position to go, to drop $50 Woolworths vouchers into people's letterboxes, because you can go and pre-purchase them from your supermarket and just literally slip them into a letterbox here and there if you think So it depends on where you're at yourself and what you're able to do.
Yeah.
There's any number of things that could be done. There's, lots and lots of people who need emotional and financial support. Reaching out and connecting with people. It could just be checking in on that elderly neighbour and giving them a phone call so that they've got a voice to talk to every other day.
So
people feel really isolated.
So what would be a good step? Of course, I take this straight to marketing and business owners, but what could be a really good step for business owners, I guess, is coming at this from a thing, how can I help? How can I assist you, particularly with your clients? How can I make it easier for you? Packaging up services that really, I guess, understanding who your customers are and what their needs are right this second, rather than just selling them exactly what you've always sold them. Maybe pivoting really quickly on the spot and coming up with care packages that are more relevant to what they need right this minute, because it could have just changed. So, I guess, really coming from a place of compassion. And I love what you say, obviously, when you say connection, of course, my heart just goes really warm and fuzzy. But yeah, it really is about that. And I've been talking a lot about this with clients. I'm talking to you about this right now. You're working on your online course. It, like providing your expertise to clients, not one-to-one in a consulting way, give it to them in a way they can afford it. And yeah, online is a beautiful way that you can afford it. That's one thing that you can do. There's many things you can do.
Absolutely. Look, my own response to that has been, okay, look, I can see that there's a lot of stress and anxiety. So I'm going to offer some free workshops online for people to come and learn some techniques around stress and anxiety and managing that, because that's what I'm seeing out there right across the community in all sectors, not just, business people and entrepreneurs, but it's the one thread that is literally running right throughout society at the moment, is that stress and anxiety. It's a low-grade anxiety. Even the people who are resilient and doing well have still got this feeling in the pit of their stomach, It's the one thing that I think I can offer that everybody needs right now. So I agree, how can I serve people? Look for ways to help people.
Love that. Oh my God, I'm so aligned with that. And you know what? Maybe they're the businesses that are going to succeed, and you come with that feeling and bring that emotion to the table. This could be exactly God. I'm not saying this is what we needed, but maybe this is kind of like Mother Nature doing its thing, and this is what was needed. We are, I think, as humans, I'm going to get a bit deep. As humans, we think we're something else. We think we're the top of the top of the chain, and we're not. We're just little blips on a big, beautiful globe, and it's bigger than us, and it's more powerful than us, and we can't control it every time, and we have to work with it.
It's interesting you talk about can't control it, because that's really what a lot of people are struggling with, loss of control. That's what's creating the anxiety, right? Loss of control. So, resilience means I can cope regardless of whether I have control or not. And that's why we really need to be developing that resilience, because here's the thing, I've lost all my possessions in a fire. I've lost my businesses. I've, lost relationships. We're not in control. It's all an illusion. Everything. And this is a reminder to everybody that circumstances can change tomorrow and you can lose it all. You can lose everything. And unfortunately, that puts a deep-seated fear into most people that, they just don't want to acknowledge that is the truth for all of them.
I guess it's because we're so caught up. Sorry, Karyn, we're so caught up in what we own and status as being what really matters. Like, we've got a bit of a skewed vision in the Western world on what the most important things are. And until you're shaken up and challenged like this, you don't really get back to the core, understand what your values are, and understand what the hell you're doing anyway. And yeah, so it's interesting times.
It can all be taken away in a heartbeat. And I don't care who you are or what it is that we're talking about, you can lose everything in a second. So get comfortable with that idea and get resilient around that, rather than fearful and catastrophizing and trying to control everything to prevent it happening. Because the reality is we don't have control. And so if we acknowledge that, and then you come from a different place.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. Were there I keep talking over the top of you all the time. Were there any other rituals that you wanted to discuss? I think I stopped you on gratitude and then we went down a complete rabbit hole there. Was there any other things that were part of your rituals that you needed to speak about?
I think, the visioning and
Yeah.
Then some healthful practices around eating and hydrating and exercising, because your physical health is something that you do need to look after as well. You know, mental health and physical health are inextricably linked. A lot of doctors don't necessarily refer to it that way, but we are one system, and you need to look after the whole system, not just one part of that system. So
I'm a massive, massive fan of that belief. How can people get in touch with you, Karyn? Sort of wrapping up, you've been amazing. Thank you very much. Is there something you want to you want to bring up that I haven't asked you, and let us know how people can get in touch with you? Because I can personally vouch for you. You've been tremendous. I feel like I've got such an advantage set up. I am resilient. I do practice gratitude. I do pretty much every single one of those rituals. I live. And I am a far happier human for it, even in challenging times. So how do we get in touch with you? And is there anything else you want to add as a bonus?
All right. So there is one thing that I want to add. I'm starting a Facebook group, which is called the Peak Performance Lab, and it's for business people. So to help them in these challenging times, help them manage their mindset. And that's a free group, and no hard sell or anything in there. It's just me making myself available to business people and entrepreneurs in order to help them through these times. So you can look that up. My Facebook page, obviously, I'm very, very active on there. So
I'll put all these links into the notes, so I'll definitely do that.
So absolutely do check that out. I've got the webinar coming up on Wednesday night around stress and anxiety. Feel free to attend that. And, they can reach out through private messenger, and of course my website will be up soon too.
Yeah, we're working madly. Yeah. I'll put all those links in, and when the website comes up, I'll go back and put that into the link as well.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much, Karyn. You've been, as always, just an absolute champion of information, a champion truth teller, which is what I love the most. And you just give it to us how it is. Not flowery, it's not flouncy, but it's full of hope, and it's realistic. So I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Any last points that you want to give people?
I guess, I just want to say that, we can be our own worst enemies. Like, these are challenging times. There's no question about that. They're unprecedented. We've never lived through a time like this before. But that doesn't mean that we can't be hopeful and optimistic and positive and look for the growth and focus on that growth mindset stuff, because let's face it, much harder to get through life if you can't operate from that place. I can see that in people around me. It's a pretty miserable way to live. So make a choice to do it differently.
And I would just say, if you're struggling, get on board with a health professional. I recommend you. You can do it remotely. You don't have to do it face to face. We can't do it face to face. So
Well, and I feel like I'm ahead of the curve, because I've been offering that for some years now, and I'm just ramping up.
Yeah. And I've done it with you over the phone, and it works tremendously. Sometimes I think it works better, actually. You can get a bit caught up when you're like face to face. But I just recommend to anybody, get the help that you need. Get healthy people around you, healthy mindset people around you. Do this. It's a daily practice. It's not something you just do in a catastrophe. It's something you do all the time to be a high-performing human.
Yeah. I like that, high-performing human. Nice.
You can take it if you like.
Actually, yeah.
I read another one today, actually, which I shared with you earlier, reinvention versus recession.
Yes, I love that. When you first told me that one, I was like, that's absolutely right. And you know what? Agile businesses who can pivot, they will benefit from times like this. You will see some businesses absolutely excel and springboard off these challenges and create things that have never been dreamt of before. We've seen this after every world war. We've seen this after all of the big challenges in the world. Be one of those businesses.
We were talking about Uber, Airbnb, all those, those massive billion-dollar companies. They all were created after the 2008 GFC. So, and they're predicting, they said that was what I heard, the reinvention versus recession. So you can think of it as a recession or a time to reinvent your business. So I'm aiming for that.
But you know what? I would add to that, we can also reinvent ourselves, because after stress and trauma, you can have what's called post-traumatic growth.
Yeah, I'm living proof. Yeah,
that growth.
I'm living proof.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we are where we are, right?
Yeah, that's so true. Because, God, I keep trying to wrap up, but I keep thinking of new things to say. Your industry has been really quiet. We talked about that just before we came online. you know, where are the health workers and the mental health workers? Like, I've been online all week just trying to help people, and the people that help people, you know, like come on, guys, get online, help people.
Can I just say, my industry, if you're talking about psychologists and professional counsellors and social workers and what have you, they are rigid in their thinking often. And I know that sounds, they're not business.
Traditional.
They're very traditional. So, you know, traditional delivery methods, traditional channels, they're not as agile as you would think. And some of that is because our registration bodies, I won't mention any names, but our registration bodies don't encourage that kind of agility. You know, they're quite rigid in their thinking and around how it should be and supposed to be and how. So I'm a bit of an outlier. So, you know, me doing things by phone and Zoom and all of those things, I've always been a little bit of an outlier. But when you look at the rest of the industry, they tend to be quite set in their ways, you know. So this is going to shake them up. And interestingly, there's one gentleman that I follow, and I've seen him this week go into Zoom, and I hope he's not watching this. I've seen him this week start Zoom delivery for some of his workshops and things. And, you know, I was just thinking to myself, wow, that's amazing, that's great. And he's a qualified doctor of psychology, and it's taken this to make him pivot. And yet his work is amazing, and he's such a charming, you know, I've been to his presentations, you know, and he talks about compassion, and he's such a charming, humorous man. It's like, you know, he should have been doing this ages ago. But I also think there's a complacency in our industry because they haven't needed to.
Yeah, that's right.
Need is going to drive it now.
Yeah. Oh, look, every industry is just about to get shaken up, and I'm really happy to be on board with all of that. So thank you, Karyn. I think you're amazing.
Thank you, Melissa. I think you're amazing too. And thanks for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. I'm going to get you back on again in future weeks. You've got lots more to share. So